Hello, this is Mr. Case, and we're looking at another river valley civilization. Last time we talked about Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. Today we're going to be talking about the Nile River civilization. Now, the geography of Egypt. Remember, Egypt is in the northeast corner of Africa, and the Nile River is going to flow 4,100 miles north to the Mediterranean Sea. It's the longest river system in the world. The second biggest is the Amazon in South America, but the Nile flows 4,100 miles northward to the Mediterranean Sea. Comes from the highlands of Ethiopia, and it winds its way down and goes through the heart of Egypt, allowing a civilization in the desert to take place. Literally, you can put 1 foot in the black and 1 foot in the red soil. It changes so drastically or abruptly. You've got the fertile soil and you've got the non-fertile soil or the desert. Now, unlike the Tigris and Euphrates being unpredictable in its flooding, the farmers of the Nile River civilization in ancient times could predict fairly accurately the flooding schedule of the Nile. It would overflow its banks and it would leave rich silt behind. So you've got water and rich soil, and they could plant their crops. Specifically, it would be grain. Now, the Greek historian Herodotus stated that Egypt was a gift of the Nile. What's he mean by that? He means that the civilization only could exist if there was fresh water, and they saw the Nile River as a manifestation of God. And so people worship the river as a god. As you go southward up the Nile, you have a series of cataracts or small whirlpools or waterfalls that do not allow river traffic to pass. It's like going up a waterfall is impossible. So it's not navigable. Navigable means you can sail up it. And that's what a cataract is. In fact, the Niagara Falls is called the Niagara Cataract. At the other end of the river, where it empties into the Mediterranean Sea, you have a triangle-shaped part of the river that's very shallow and has a lot of silt in it. That's called the delta, and that's where many farmers planted their crops, is in that marshy area where there's a lot of cattails and reeds and rich silt. About 5,200 years ago, in 3200 BC, Egypt begins to trade with their neighbors to the south, the Kushites and the Nubians. When I think of Nubians, I think of black Africans. Is it redundant to say black Africans aren't all Africans black? No, not necessarily. Some are olive-skinned, like the Egyptians. Egypt begins to unite in a kingdom about 5,200 years ago under their king Menes, M-E-N-E-S. He made his capital along the Nile River at the city of Memphis. And the kings were considered godlike, and so they called them pharaohs. And the government was ruled as a theocracy. The means God, ocracy means rule by. So they believed that their ruler was God sitting on the throne. And it was his duty to promote truth and justice and rule over his people. The king, when he died, was considered to rule even when he died. And one of the first orders of a pharaoh was to tell the people, build my pyramid, build my burial tomb. And that's what a pyramid was, to house the dead bodies of the pharaoh and maybe his queen. And it might take 30, 40 years to build a pyramid, so if a king died before the pyramid was completed, they just buried him in the foundations and continued to go on. The Old Kingdom ran public works projects like the pyramids and building of the cities. Now, religion is going to be an important part here. People were polytheistic, and notice the gods that they worshipped. Ra was the sun god. Then you had Horus, Isis, which was a goddess, and Osiris. I believe Osiris was the god of the dead. They believed if your heart was not heavy with sin, that it weighed less than a feather, that you would be ushered into a wonderful afterlife. And so people mummified their dead pharaohs. They would bury them with food and drink for their journey to the underworld, and they would be buried with weapons. And if you were a great pharaoh, you were buried with live servants because you would need them in the afterlife. Can you imagine being entombed with the dead pharaoh? I'd be looking for a way out of there. They did have a social structure where you have the nobles at the top and wealthy folks, government officials, priests, army officers, then down to the merchants, people who sold stuff, artisans who made stuff, farmers, laborers, and then the lowest were the slaves. It was a static society. You could not rise in status. If you were born a merchant class, you're going to stay merchant. Women did have equality with men, which was kind of amazing. They did have a writing system. It was called hieroglyphics, and it was very flexible. A picture stood for an idea, and so there was an ability to decipher these hieroglyphics using the Rosetta Stone. They wrote on a crude piece of paper called papyrus. It was reeds that were flattened out and used as a crude paper. They were very skilled in mathematics, and so they used math in building the pyramids and calculating a calendar. And they also had a medical system which included surgery. There's evidence that people had brain surgery, very crude, to relieve the pressure on the brain, and people lived after that surgery. That's impressive. Around 1640 BC, that's about 3,600 years ago, you have a people that rode into Egypt on chariots from the Suez area of Southwest Asia, and they ruled for about 70 years. Their name was the Hyksos, and they so dominated the Egyptians that the Egyptians had to give up. They had chariots. It's like having helicopters that made you very mobile. And for 70 years, about a generation, the Hyksos ruled. Later on, they're going to kick out the Hyksos, but they're going to keep the chariots. That's called cultural diffusion. So notice a chariot here. You might have a person driving the chariot and then somebody on the back who is flinging arrows from the back of the chariot. Those are battle chariots. Well, this is 2.1 and this or 2.2, and this is Mr. K's, and we'll see you down the way. Bye-bye.